Go ahead, Martin, you can slide it.
Okay.
All right, so we'll start up, obviously, guys, making connections. Yep, making connections and meaningful connections at that. And we'll kind of get right to it. We'll cover a lot of things. You guys have opportunity for question and answer at the end. But with that being said, no further ado, let's get into it. On you, Martin. All right, so establishing the network, that's what this is about. That's what we're trying to do, right? So, and you often hear the phrase, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. So it's obviously a very important, essential thing in the professional realm. So the first thing that we'd like to do, and these things may fall in a multitude of orders. There's not an exact science to it or a particular exact way or that you will go about it. But these are the things that you'll encompass in trying to establish meaningful networks throughout your professional career. The first thing is knowing the network in which you're trying to create. And by that means we know what the network could potentially offer or be, and also know what you have to offer the network so that it's a two-way relationship, right? So in knowing what your network, you want to do your homework, know something about the person that you're reaching out to, know who it is that you're reaching out to and why that you're reaching out to them. All right, initiate the interaction. Once I've established or decided who it is that I need to contact or who it is that I'm reaching out to, now it's on me to initiate that conversation. And then today, there's several ways in which I can initiate a conversation and still maintain my professionalism. From every social media platform, even decision makers in any business, and several businesses have some form of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. There's some social platform in which I can reach out to them, in addition to the more old-fashioned traditional ways, emailing, if you have a personal contact or you're able to obtain a personal contact. And we'll talk about using your resources around you to establish those things and establish a network with higher ups and decision makings. And after I've initiated the interaction through one of those methods, I want to confirm the interaction with the person in which I'm initiating the interaction with. And that's no different than closing a conversation. Once the initial contact has been made, I want to close the conversation and then kind of implant something for the future or a future conversation. We'll go to the next one, Martin. So now after I nurture and grow the network into a relationship. So now I found who I've wanted to, I found John Doe. This is a person that I need to reach out to be most effective or give myself the best opportunity in this career field or obtaining said job. So when I'm reaching out to this person, my initial reach out, I want to be personable and genuine, right? I want to be, I want to make it seem as though I want this person to know that it's just not, I'm just not asking you for something, right? Like this can be both a professional relationship as well as a personal relationship. But if this is a relationship or if this is a job in which I'm trying to obtain, there's going to be some point in which you and I work together. So our initial, when I reach out, I want to be personal, right? I want to make it as though I want to make you feel like, this is someone that I wouldn't mind having around me or working with or being a part of my organization. So in my professionalism, I want to be very personable and genuine. In that, I want to stay fresh to mind, right? So I want to be consistent. Decision makers are usually really busy. They have a lot going on. So I want to be consistent, right? So after my initial contact, maybe you hear something back, maybe you don't. But again, we're just making contact and opening up some line of communication. And I want to follow up with that person, right? So I'm consistent, staying fresh on their mind. If I reach out once, maybe I follow up in week 2 or 3 weeks after my initial follow-up. And again, in my follow-ups, I'm still being personal and genuine. Maybe I'm not even talking about anything that has to do with the job. Maybe I'm just checking in, hey, like at this time, particularly, example with COVID, hey, such and such, I hope everything's okay with you and yours. Stay safe. They see your name, nice gesture. I'm staying, it's just a means to maintain communication and keep the line of communication open. It also sets yourself apart, gives you a chance to set yourself apart. And it also falls in line with being consistent, right? So, and your hope, theoretically, you get feedback from these connections or from these efforts of communication. So now we're engaged in dialogue or conversation. But even still, if you are just kind of almost talking to yourself, and I've done it several times where I feel like I'm talking, it's just kind of one way for a long time, but maintain your consistency and be personal and genuine each time. We can move to the next one, Martin. And then the last one, and Jessica will really hammer this home, use your relationships effectively from both a professional and personal level. Relationships, again, they can work both ways. The best relationships, or when you're getting the most out of your relationships, is when you are using them on both a professional and personal level. And the way in doing that is some of the things we mentioned. You're personable, you're genuine. So now you're establishing on the way to ultimately being hired, or maybe you're not hired. The connection rather may not pay off until later down the line. But in doing those things, you've established some line of communication and relationship in which you can refer back to or communicate with this person, be it something about your profession or your job, or whether you guys have just through your communication established or found some type of common ground or something else in which you guys can converse and establish some type of relationship on. If you guys have any questions on any of that, or would like me to hit deeper on something, or heard something I said that you want to know more about, chat again. We'll have question and answer at the end. Remember it, write it down. We're not take what Jessica, she's going to build on, particularly the using the relationships effectively part, combine the two, and then we'll meet again at the end of the presentation.
Does anybody have any questions? Can you hear me?
We're having an echo. Okay, go ahead and try again, Jessica.
Can you hear me?
That's better. Okay. So I muted your
right.
PC and I unmuted your phone, so we should be good now.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Deleon, for covering that for us. I think one of the things as we think about making a meaningful connection is to understand right now, we all have a connection with UIW registering for this webinar. And now it's just leveraging in that into a relationship, and a relationship that's going to be mutual between yourself and the person that you're trying to build with. So one of the things that I was taking away, especially looking at everyone who's on the group, it's mentorship, whether we're in a position to provide mentorship or seek mentorship, and even those of us that are in a position to provide mentorship, we often need to seek mentors. What I really love about mentorship is that we often tend to think that it's just professional, and Deleon covered it's also personal. For me, it's also spiritual. It's learning from several different people and always being able to learn. And so really leveraging the people that are around you, your circle of influence, or maybe people that aren't in your circle yet. So as we look at leveraging relationships and creating these meaningful connections, you have to be proactive at it. And he already covered it with the nurturing part. And the nurturing part just isn't that one-way street like he covered. It's that two-way benefit. It's being able to, like, for instance, your alumni group is leveraging the relationship as they're looking for speakers to talk on various topics. And then hopefully we can create some connections after this. And it's also when you're looking to leverage that relationship, especially with those of you that have talked about what you aspire to be. I heard some people in communication arts and criminal justice. It's being able to find that person, identify that person, and making sure that you value that connection for sure. And then also learning. I think some of the questions that I saw that come into was, and this doesn't necessarily have to apply for mentorship, but it's when you have a mentor, some of my mentors are very stoic. I'm a little more extroverted than they are. And so I have some mentors that come in and they challenge me and they play the role of devil's advocate. And then they ask me questions like, why? Why did you do that? And so I think that when we're seeking these connections and building on this relationships and we've learned to leverage them, we also want to learn from them. So if you're going to seek out a mentorship opportunity or you're going to mentor others, knowing that we're coming from different places, different personalities, and different backgrounds. So being able to provide that opportunity to learn, adapt, and really take value to what that person is telling you. I recently was in the middle of writing a blog called Embracing the Receive, and oftentimes we're not very receptive to receiving feedback or criticism or even just something a little more poignant. And so being able to learn that if people are investing their time in you, you have to be able to embrace it and learn from it. And then obviously you want to lean in. I've learned so much from those that I mentor, and especially if there's a difference in age or backgrounds, I ask a lot of questions. And so it is often, and you'll find yourself for the students that are on, you'll be surprised at some of your professors and some of us more seniors, how much we learn from you, from just the way you communicate, the latest technology, what moves you in a business. You're our future workforce. And so don't be afraid to lean in and ask those that you've established a connection with and a relationship with, especially around mentorship, of what can I offer you? A lot of times when we're in the position where we're seeking out a mentor, we only look at it as what we can take in and absorb like a sponge. But I think there's something very challenging within ourselves when we can ask and break out of that comfort zone and asking, what is there anything I can provide from you? Is there anything I can teach you? And you'd be surprised. I see some of the senior folks, I'll call us seniors in the gallery, kind of nodding their heads, because we do learn a lot from those that we provide mentorship for. And not only that, it's inspiring. Both of them, you tend to inspire each other. You know, the Bible says that iron sharpens iron. And that's definitely what mentorship is about. It's two people getting together, somebody coming in as wanting to teach, the other one is wanting to come in and learn, and then you will see that relationship blossom into something else, whether it's opportunities through volunteering, helping you set goals, coaching. A lot of times people tune into WWIFM, What's in It for Me? You've heard of that? And I always tell everybody that radio station's over. No more DJ there. We really have to start looking at these relationships as an investment into ourselves and with each other. Next slide, Martin. Does anyone have any questions? So far, so good. So as you're looking on building these relationships, as what Deleon had said, you kind of shift into mentorship. It's also about building a network. You know, here we are at a time during COVID-19 where we're forced, and it's again that adaptability, right, to come up with different ways to network. Kind of nod your head or raise your hand if you've participated in a virtual happy hour, whether it was happy with your favorite soda or happy with your favorite spirit. A lot of people are coming together to build different networks, groups of people. We have to do things differently than the way we've done in the past. And this is about expanding your circle. Today is a perfect example of expanding your circle. So hopefully that when we leave here, you'll be able to shoot me an email, text, or find me on LinkedIn so I can find you too. And let's really take that first initiative of expanding our circle. Having the alumni group with UIW and having some of your professors, that's a great first step. And that's a huge hurdle that is put out of the way. so that you can expand your circle. I started my business as an employee, as the director of public relations for Stripes convenience stores. And as I went out to branch out on my own, I utilized that circle and of my influence to help build my business. I'm going to pause right there because I think, Martin, you said we had a question that's coming in from Facebook.
We do, yes. So one of our Facebook audience has a question. Their question is, they want to know tips for identifying a mentor and how to ask someone to be a mentor.
That's a great question. And I think those tips is, so what we're making the assumption that you're going to pull in from UIW or that you already have a network established. But if you don't, right, you can find who you want that you maybe they're known in the business community. Maybe they're known in the church, or maybe they're known through somebody else that can introduce you to them. We all have the 7 degrees of separation, and Deleon had alluded to and had said, you know, it's not who you know, or what you know, it's who you know. And with that, it's who knows you. So you have to be able to go ahead, and if you see someone, most of the time when I'm asked, hey, can I pick your brain, or do you have a minute? It's very flattering because we know that we are making an impact for those. And I don't know anybody that has said, oh, you know, a student called me or a younger person called me and I just don't have time for that. I've yet to meet anyone to say that. And if they say that, you don't want them as your mentor at that point. So it's like, done, move on, go somewhere else. But you'd be surprised at just putting LinkedIn, Facebook, everything that Deleon had mentioned, it's putting it out there. It's, hey, Jessica, I saw that you have a PR firm and you have clients in retail. I'm looking at going into merchandising. Do you think that you could have time with chatting with me? I have parents that tell me if there's a connection with maybe a professor, or even your parents' say, hey, my daughter is graduating with her communications degree. Do you mind talking to her? Leaning into your parents or the adults, and when I say adults, we're all adults here, but maybe those that have been in the workforce a little longer, it's not a bad idea. I can't imagine anyone as we went across the Zoom saying, no, I don't have time for that. I think that's part of that valuing the time. Once you establish that connection, is finding a time and taking that initiative. So it's about initiative. So I think that is the tip right there. Think about who or what you want to do and try to identify that person in your community or in the business, whether it is a doctor or someone in the sports field that maybe Mr. Hines has some connection to somebody in the sporting realm that he can introduce you to. So that's about leveraging your circle of influence. Does that help? Does that, whoever that is on Facebook, does that resonate with you? Or is there some head nods with people here in the chat? If that makes sense. So definitely just ask. The other part of expanding your network is to join a group or an organization, just much like the Alumni Network. I know when I worked with your Dean of Parent and Alumni Relations, we really have leveraged each other's relationships with groups and organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. If you're in business, maybe some student organizations, professional organizations. Maybe it's just a group of you all that want to come together that are like-minded. And when you have that group, or you join that group, or you build that group, challenge yourself to bring another person. At the end of the day, whether you're seeking out a mentor, whether you're establishing a group or joining a group, do everything with intention. You need to value your time. You need to value your space. You need to value your mentor's time. You need to value their space, and really look at it from a lens of purpose. I think if you approach any of these connections with purpose, it will turn into a really beautiful relationship. I served on the alumni board for several years when I moved here from San Antonio, and I served alongside of another board member. Her name is Leah. We talked during the board meetings. We never really talked on the phone or email. We're Facebook friends, again, taking that relationship and extending it to social network. I probably haven't talked to her in 2 years in person. And today I received a letter from her. She knows that I have a senior who is graduating during COVID-19. As you can imagine, it's been a rough year, no prom, no information on graduation yet. And she wrote the nicest letter, and it really resonated with me today that she was just sending words of encouragement. And she also sent a monetary gift for my daughter, and she wrote, "I don't know you, but I've met your mom, and I'm seeing your story on Facebook, and it inspires me." I would have been just happy with the letter. I was even more happy with the little monetary gift, but that was really creating that meaningful connection. Just her taking the initiative to reach out to someone she had a connection with. We're all Cardinals, and saying, "Hey, I see you, I see your daughter, and I just want to offer some encouragement." And I'm even more ecstatic that she's a Cardinal. So I think even doing little things like that, you see something, and if you're moved with intention, don't stop yourself from making that movement to build, because now she moved me and provoked my emotions. And that is a connection that I can't let go. And I'll be writing her soon. And that's more of a spiritual and personal. Will something professional come out of it? I don't know. But I think that's the beauty of connections and relationships, is that it's a continuous circle. It never closes, it never ends. And it's just an ability to just keep building and building and building and expanding. Any questions so far? So I know that we had some questions that came in. Martin, if you want to go to the next slide. And some of the discussions that came in, Deleon and I have divided the questions, but some of the questions are around the relationships, and some of them more about managing relationships. So questions that came in was getting your point across continuously while others interrupt you continuously. So this is about working relationships. I'm going to keep reading because I think I have an overarching answer for this. In a profession where you work with college students, how are you able to separate personal from professional, especially in the digital world, and if they are around the same age and generation? And then the other question that came in was, how does the talk of moving forward to a different place of work without losing ties, especially if they're known rivals? All of those questions, when I look at that, I think about the word boundaries. And that's a very important word when you think about relationships. It's knowing and setting and respecting boundaries. And sometimes boundaries can be direct. Sometimes boundaries can be a little more subtle, but at the end of the day, boundaries are always intentional, and boundaries are better than building walls. And so what I like about setting those boundaries is, depending on the situation, you can hold those boundaries to yourself, or you can share them. So if I am a professor and I'm the same age as another student and we connected digitally, then I need to set a boundary. I do. I don't necessarily need to discuss it with the student, but I need to set a boundary. These are the things I'm going to post, knowing that I'm accepting the student as a friend. These are the ways I'm going to communicate with the student. You probably don't want to chat it up on Facebook Messenger. That would be my boundary. And so if there was a question that came in on Facebook Messenger from a student, I'd be like, hey, would you please send this to my email? So I think it's about boundaries. Also, when you look at that person that's always disrupting you, and as you're trying to get your point across in a meeting, you have to, that's more of a direct and intentional boundary where you can pull that person to the side and say, hey, just a heads up, when we're always talking or when we're meeting, I've noticed that you tend to interrupt me a lot. Next time we're in this setting, I'd like to be able to finish it. I'm all about a debate. We can debate all day long, but just allow me the same space as you allow yourself to get your point across. Just want to set a healthy work boundary. And, you know, people really respect that. And I think there's something so, and it's authentic, and that's a part of connections and relationships, is keeping it as authentic as possible. So setting that boundary. And I think that other question that came in is moving forward to a different workplace. Again, there's some boundaries that was set from that former employer. And there's some ethics and integrity that you need to have those boundaries around you. If you're going to another business, or you need to make sure that you're not losing ties because you want to keep your circle open, but setting those boundaries, maybe not talking to them about, hey, you were up for this contract as well, and we got it. Have those boundaries, to keep those boundaries and maintain them professional. And that way, that professional relationship, when you just check on each other, can morph into something personal. But I think for all of the questions that came in, at least for my part, I'd like for everyone to be able to explore those boundaries and setting those boundaries on their own. Me personally, I boundary set before I even goal set my business. What am I able to, how am I able to move forward? Who do I want to work with? What's my bandwidth? So I think that's something that you can take onto you. Any good mentor would tell you to set those in place. But I think for all of those questions that came in, that would be my overarching answer, is to know your boundaries and what boundaries are you crossing with those other people and who's crossing theirs. And I think, Deleon, you have some questions that came in that were from the students and about introverts.
I do. And ironically, I can slightly identify with those introverts. And the first two questions were questions regarding being introverts and establishing and maintaining professional relationships as introverts. And the first thing that came to my mind was be yourself, just really be you. And we spoke earlier about being genuine and personable. And so like whoever you are at the initial point or contact of a relationship, that's who you have to be, right? So I don't want to try to be or, force myself to be something different and then have to try to maintain that. I just want to be myself. So in all of my efforts or my when I'm reaching out to the person, be it if it's a social media platform, I'm reaching out, whether I'm just staying in touch or I'm asking something personable or kind of reaching out to them on a personal note. And if it's someone that you're currently working with, our communication or our conversation is just, it may be concise and matter of fact, but the most important thing is just maintaining some line of communication. We don't have to talk for hours and hours about nothing. We don't have to, there needs to be some line or form of communication between us. And most times, the person in which you're trying to maintain that relationship with, if it's a decision maker or someone of an authoritative position, as Jessica just alluded to, there's going to be boundaries anyways, right? So I just want to be able to, an open line of conversation, ultimately be myself. You don't have to force anything or feel like you need to be something different or more than what you are. Again, just be genuine, open, and inviting to that person. You don't want to be kind of seem closed off. I think that's an easy line to cross as an introvert. You don't want to seem closed off or hard to approach. Be open, inviting, and be yourself, though, at the end of it. The third question I had was, how do you get your foot in the door in creating relationships with established professionals when you yourself are new to the job market with little experience? Or in other words, how do you make these professional relationships mutually beneficial rather than one-sided? So for me, I've only been I played at Incarnate Word for 3 seasons, and I played professionally, which I've only been working for 6. So I'm kind of in that position now in my respective career field. And again, it's just maintaining a line of communication. And if I'm trying to get my foot in the door, there's already an understanding. A decision maker or higher up knows what it is that I'm probably looking for. They know what they can do for me. it'll be on me to kind of show what I can do for them. But as far as me establishing a relationship, we're just people. That higher up is just a person. You know, they woke up and got dressed the same way I did. So if I'm just asking, hey, how you doing? Hey, how things going for you? Hey, how have you handled this COVID situation? Or hey, is it whatever it is? Again, we're just talking as two people. The professional part will kind of work itself out, right? What we want to do really is establish the relationship as people and then allow the professional part to work itself in because the way it actually works is, as Jessica alluded to, and as I said before, like it's not always what you know, it's who you know. Things will come up and it'll be, oh, I know such and such, right? I know that person. So then everything else will kind of, just like I always say, like, and Jessica really hit it, and I didn't say this, and it was a good point by her. You need people to also know you. So if someone knows my name, everything else, my resume will kind of justify it, but the bulk of it, or the important thing is they know me, right? So it doesn't have to be fancy. It's not tricky. Approach it the same way you would approach it any other person or authoritative person or adult or senior, whoever it is in your regular normal life, right? Obviously, we have to be professional, and we don't exactly know that person, but we're approaching them with the same mannerism and the same intent. I hope that answers the question. And the part of it being two-way, making it two-way again, that's and I'll touch on this one. This one is okay, it's the same one. It's adding, you add your own value, right? Like, so for me personally, when I reach out to a general manager and I'm asking, essentially asking for a position on that staff, while I have to show him what it is my value is. I know what it is that he can do for me, but I have to show how or what value I bring, right? Whatever it is, you have to find, you know your worth. Nobody knows your worth like you know your worth. So whatever you think your worth is, or whatever you think, or you find yourself value in yourself, those are the things that you want to impose on that person or shed light on or give insight to that person. And whatever that is, that part is on you. So once you identify, okay, hey, I can do this for this person, or I can do this for this company, you have to find ways, and you may have to be creative and find ways in which you show that. The next question is, Deleon, how did you break into the sports world, and what did you do to market yourself? So I've kind of always been in the sports world. Again, I played in Incarnate Word, and then I played professionally 2 years after that in Europe. So I've kind of always been entrenched in the sports world. My first coaching job was actually at a high school in South Texas, and I got it through it just application, the way the high school worked. I mean, you have to kind of teach, you have to teach or be in some form of the teaching. I was a paraprofessional actually, but even in that, I was just all of the coaches in that district, and it's ironically, as I'm saying this out loud, I got that job because somebody that I knew somebody, and they told that somebody, and then I got the job through that again. So it was just part of my network, but it was just kind of knocking doors. I'm reaching out. I want to coach basketball. So again, so this is the very first class. So now I know what I want to do. And now I'm going to identify who it is that I need to contact. So I was reaching out to athletic directors, the college coaches in the area, and that's how it happened. I spoke with a college coach who knew somebody I knew, and then they told the high school coach, and then there it was. And then everything else, like I say, your resume and your experience will kind of justify the relationship, but it started from the relationship and me just kind of knocking doors and understanding what it is that I wanted to do and identifying who I needed to get in contact in order to do that. And since then, I've just kind of taken that same approach up to the professional level. The next one is, how do you develop good relationships with people who are very different from you in terms of his or her professional field, beliefs, work ethic, etc. All right, so I kind of like this. I love I'm personally am attracted to differences, right? So from cultural, racial, gender, religious, spiritual, whatever it is, because in the differences, there's common ground. Again, everybody's a person, right? We all woke up and got dressed the same. In the differences allow for conversation, right? So now, if you like the color red and I like the color blue, well, now that gives us an opportunity to converse about why you like red and what it does for you, and I can talk about blue and what it does for me, and in that, maybe we even teach each other something, right? So kind of just embrace the differences. Try to learn from the differences. I think a lot of times people shy away or intimidated because that person is different and there's no common ground, and what are we going to talk about? And it's overcomplicated. We talk about the differences, right? And especially in a professional, if we can do it professionally. So kind of like in short, embrace the differences, find some commonalities and learn from your differences. And it's a way for you guys to kind of enhance and diversify each other and whatever those differences are, right? The differences may not allow for you guys to meet up after work every day and go have a drink or come over on the weekends and hang out. But from a professional perspective, the differences allow for some type of conversation for us to learn something about each other. And maybe it's just that we learn that, man, we won't be friends outside of the office. And that's fine, because again, there's boundaries, right? So we just always want to remain professional, and anyways, at least be professional. And if we're able to turn that thing into a personal relationship as well, that's the optimum situation.
Deleon, we had a question through the chat.
Oh, okay.
So one of the participants is asking, when is talking about your value, when do you know it is too much before it becomes bragging when you share your value?
That's a good question. So I think in the worst case scenario, if you are, so when I think of sharing my worth, for me personally, I'll give you the same example, and maybe you can kind of tailor to your career field. I'm not sure what the career field is of the person that asked the questions, but for me, so if I want to show my value to someone without bragging, I'll give you real life examples. So as I'm currently in this situation, right? So season is over, my season is over, G League, the NBA is still deciding, it'll probably be over as well. So as I'm reaching out to different general managers and head coaches and decision makers, me showing my value would be presenting them with maybe a scouting report that I did, or video edit. It's a piece of tangible work that I did. This is an insight to my mind and what I can bring to the organization. For someone, I'm so sports oriented, guys. For someone maybe if I'm in computer engineering or software, maybe I built a hard drive, or maybe I've done something, maybe I've created an app, right? Hey, such and such, take a look at this. I just created this app. So just something tangible to see, okay, just to show your work, right? And again, that's on you to figure out how to show your value, right? That part is on you. That part, I don't know that maybe one of your mentors or you have to figure out how to actually show your value. I don't mean it so much from a verbal standpoint, because we can say a lot of things, right? I can say, I'm the best coach that hasn't been hired yet, right? But I mean, that doesn't really, I have to give something to show or intrigue or give interest, make that person interested in.
I think that's a great point, Deleon. It's Jessica.
Okay.
That you said that would be really one of those questions for a mentor. If you're in that position, you can ask. And he had said, and we had talked about just authentic. I think that when you're sharing your story and you're sharing some of your compelling experiences with others, they'll be able to hear that humility, and it's about attitude. If you're going to come off arrogant, you're bragging, and there's no in and out about it. You've heard someone bragging, but if there's a way to share your story, like what he said, being able to share your experiences, like, oh, I had experience in that, 3 years ago, I was asked to participate in that. If you need any help, let me know. And that's how they hear your stories. It's from those conversation starters, and to continue to fuel those conversations.
Thanks, Jessica. And the last question I had here listed is, I would like to find out more about making connections with Deleon regarding opportunities to play college basketball. If you look at my name, it should be listed here, Deleon Hines, just the way it's listed on the screen at yahoo.com. Shoot me an email with your contact information, man. I'll give you a call and we can talk about all that part.
So we had another chat question, and this is for the people that have worked at UIW for several years. How would you describe the work culture at the university, and what would be a good advice to someone that just joined the university as a staff?
I'll go ahead and take that question. Again, my name is Lisa McNary, and I'm the Dean of Alumni and Parent Relations. I've been at UIW as an employee for 15 years now, and the culture is a culture of giving, I want to use the word love, but that's exactly what it is. It's a caring environment, and you get more than you give. I mean, I have grown so much. You can feel the passion and the work that the sisters have done for many, many years. You may not see a lot of the sisters on campus anymore, but their mission still holds true. and you can see it through the employees. And what gives me joy is seeing the students come in as freshmen and growing both personally and professionally, and watching them cross the stage and being proud of the person that they've become. And, you know, working at Incarnate, where you see not just the students, but everybody grow as a whole person, not just grow in their job. And I see a lot of collaboration between employees and departments as well. So it's more of it's a family. It's a Cardinal family.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have any other questions that we want to ask? You can unmute yourself and share with us, or you can submit it through the chat feature.
I'll ask a question, Gabby, over here. I'm going to ask, what would the difference be, or if you have any tips of networking virtually as opposed to going to events and meeting people, or, you know, through employment? I think a lot of the students now are having to network online and trying to navigate that, especially during this time of COVID. So if you can have an, you know, share any tips that you would have on networking online, maybe on LinkedIn or Facebook.
This is Jessica. I always keep my LinkedIn up to date, and I try to expand the network. I even take some time to look to see who my first, it says you have first, second, third connections. I even look to see who my connections have connections with. And then if it's something that I want to lean into or invest in, I may ask that person to connect with me. I know that UIW, for example, has a LinkedIn page. There's also different Facebook pages too, with some groups of communicators in San Antonio who I've never met with before, but they're doing all these virtual webinars and conferences and then giving us opportunities to meet each other. So I think there's lots of opportunities leveraging social media, leveraging these different platforms, but it's about taking that initiative, right? Just like everybody did today, registering, seeking out, finding. It's there 80% of the time. They're free. And so being able to leverage that with those groups that are important to you, or even groups that you want to learn about, like Deleon said, even finding groups that you're very curious about and joining those groups so that you can build from your network.
And just piggybacking off of that, like I've had even several people throughout this off season, guys that are graduate assistants at different universities or about to graduate, reach out to me on LinkedIn and simply ask to get on a phone call. And again, like she just said, a lot of times, especially now, they're free and have open time. So you're just reaching out on LinkedIn and asking to schedule a phone call. And then those phone calls was just, again, we revert back to some of the things that we've said before, just being genuine and personable and such, and letting the conversation take on